in the next panel, since everybody is already here, and probably this will have a little bit more written than if you had a break. What do you say? You agree? If you agree, so now we are going to have the second panel, Modern War Teaching in Pandemic Times, the approach of Professor Fenge's pupils, and I give the floor to the moderator, that will be Professor Athanasius Kaisis. Professor Athanasius, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I used to be a member of this illustrious group of LPs, but things happened which are not to mention here. After all, I am not a member now, but I follow with great interest the works of this group, and I think this is really a masterpiece. It's something wonderful, something which connects Europe and gives to the students an opportunity to learn more, not only the national law, but to have a good idea about what is happening in geopolitics, and more important, to see people from other European countries. Allow me first, before we enter to the second part of this program, first to say some words about my teacher, my colleague, Professor Hilmar Fenge. I met Professor Fenge towards the end of 1972. Maybe most of you were not born in that time, but this is true. It was the end of 1972, and I met Professor Fenge in his office in Juristische Seminar. After all, he invited me to his flat in January 1973. His lovely lady helped me to obtain my first room at a friend's house. This was really important. It was my first invitation by a professor, and it was the first time that a professor woman interested for me and find the way out for me to obtain my first room in Heidelberg, which was not so easy as you can fancy. Well, I closely followed all lectures and seminars by Professor Fenge from 1973 till his maybe time of departure of Heidelberg, 1978-9. At least 4 years of lectures and seminars, especially the seminars on legal theory, sociology of law, and legal methodology, were extremely beneficial to me. Studying with Professor Fenge enlarged my horizon regarding the relationship between law and other scientific disciplines. Later, having all these premises, later I understood that we have entered into the age of digitality and added digital studies and law, this topic, to my area of research. My Professor Fenge did not only teach me civil procedure law and legal methodology. His character always was a model for me regarding the importance of free speech, of the openness and tolerance towards different opinions, the love for teaching, the care for students, and most importantly, civil courage ethics and research. I thank you, Hilmar, very much for everything you have done for me in this difficult time, in this very difficult legal school of Heidelberg, as you know that personally. And I wish you all the best for the future. I'm sure that you will work for students and that you will be continuing your scientific research for many, many years. All the best to you and to your family, and many, many thanks one more time. Thank you very much. After this, first, I would like to give the speech to Professor Fenge. Maybe he would like to address some words. If it is not the case, we go on with the program. Professor Apalagaki will speak about modern law teaching in pandemic times. Hilmar, would you like to have the floor?
Hilmar?
Professor Silva, would you ask Professor Hilmar if he wants to have the floor for a minute or something?
Yes, my dear Hilmar, our friend Athanasius is asking if you want to take the floor.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, Thanasis, for your warm words. And we will meet at another place. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, I know my name, Athanasius, is a difficult name. I always was asked in Germany, what's your name? I said, Athanasius Kaisis. The answer was, hello, Ambrosius, how are you? I said, it is not Ambrosius, it's Athanasius. And after this came, hello, Antonius, how are you? This was difficult always. But this is the name, Athanasius, and not Athanasius, which is a Latin name. In any case, let's go on with Professor Apalagaki. Harula, you have the floor now.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you, dear chair, dear Thanasis, as chairman used to say. Thank you, dear colleagues and friends, for giving me the floor on such a special opportunity and occasion. Well, Professor Kaisis recalled also my memories. It was May 1984, as at that time, Mrs. Falzi, the leader or the oldest professor in civil procedural law in the law faculty, called me to enter his office. That was the first time I met Professor Fenge. The reason was that, having a big distance with Mr. Kaisis, I was the one who at that time spoke acceptable German. So I have been asked to review the program, the bilateral agreement between Greece and Hanover on exchanging students and staff, or I say, and other unpleasant task. Short after that, 10 days after that, Professor Kaisis, being my supervisor, ordered me more or less to join the Hanover faculty for my research. At that time, I was not very happy to join Northern Germany, but I didn't know that this event would change my life. Now, having completed almost 45 years in the Aristotelian University of Thessaloniki, I'm really honored to be under the demanding but very constructive leadership and supervision of Professor Kaisis in Greece and of Hilmar Fenge in Germany. I'm glad to be their pupil, although I know that I shall never reach the same achievements like they both done. Both of them are registered as pioneers in the law teaching and, of course, in the insightful, long-lasting research, being able to adjust their methods, their interest in the time. For instance, we all know that the honored professor Hilmar Fenge, still today with his speech, show us the way how to survive in the program, how to reform it, how to keep this long-lasting activity in Erasmus. And Professor Kaisis is still an active member of the university community, being currently director of the first international university in Greece, the International University of Thessaloniki. So I shall continue, and I'm indeed very grateful to both of you to be your pupil, even if you continue to be very strict with me. What they have done, they have combined the methodology of law, the traditional way of thinking with new methods. Hilmar Fenge was the one who have introduced in his classes. I have had the opportunity to attend a lot of his classes at that time, but also later on, and the same has been done by Professor Kaisis. And so by giving a small example of their law teaching methods, I can deliver to you some views and some experience regarding the law teaching in the pandemic. Maybe you are aware that the Aristotelian University of Thessaloniki is the biggest in Greece, although Thessaloniki is the second city in population, amounts about 50,000 students in all the faculties and almost 250 of teaching staff. Well, we can say that at least the 50% of the students in all faculties uses to attend the classes. The nature of the law teaching is law teaching means that it's not mandatory for the students to join their classes. Nevertheless, the rooms are always full by students. A good reason, therefore, would be the first, that the people desire the socializing among them. The second should be that our teaching system is unfortunately still very examinations oriented. That means that the people have to be familiar with the lectures in the class, and it seems that they do enjoy it. But gradually, at least 10 years before or even more, the university was imposed, let's to say, to introduce some e-meanings in order to cover a part of activities. So we have introduced the e-learning system where we submit all the relevant material for the students, or even the students can submit their papers. We use the same method in order to participate at committees which have to assess the teaching staff. And on suddenly in March 2020, we had to introduce, due to the first pandemic lockdown, the remotely teaching as the sole possibility to continue our teaching activity. The beginning was almost a disaster, but after 2 or 3 months, everybody was very happy and very familiar with it. We continue to use the same teaching method even in the academic year 2021. Greece has had the second longest lockdown at that time, from November up to end of May 2021. And then being optimistic that the vaccination was in progress, that we have to come back to the normality in all life activities. We have now again as mandatory the physical teaching. The university reopened in September 2021, and following the opinion of the Ministry of Education, it is not legal to hold classes via e-meetings. In the reality, we cannot challenge the ongoing pandemic, and therefore, to be honest, at least in the law faculty, we use either to go solely remotely or to offer a hybrid system. That means some hours and some classes in physical and some others remotely. It is remarkable that the students themselves, they seem to prefer the remote system, and they prefer it because not only because they don't have to move, but because we succeeded to establish an interactive way of communication, which in the past and in the physical was not very common. For instance, we can share text, we can share PowerPoints, we can exchange views. My experience is that at least 30 people open their cameras and 30 people participate actively in the classes. I have repeatedly asked the students whether they would desire for us to hold some classes in physical presence. And just among 180 people who attend the classes, just 3 of them expressly told that they do prefer the physical. Of course, it is evident that for some reasons, which are not only have to do with academic, but also with the economy as a whole, we shall not replace during the pandemic and after it the physical teaching by e-meetings. But we can keep a kind of roomies and zoomies, as the Americans used to say. We can keep a core of our activity in physical, and that's mandatory. And then we may make use and continue the e-meetings for having a supplementary communication with our students or to offer some additional classes. Unfortunately, we have 3 kinds of activity which cannot be replaced through digital. The one is the research. You cannot do research without being physical presence in the library, in the room of the professor, without having a physical contact. Second, examination. The experience I have done through the digital examination is a disaster. I could not, of course, prove that the students have used illegal methods to answer the questions, even if that's a multiple choice. But it is not coincidence that at least 20% of them has received the best excellent grade, and that cannot be the case following the statistic. For these both areas, we need, as we say, a strong identification, and that cannot be replaced remotely. Of course, Erasmus is a part of it. Erasmus is a transfer of experience. Erasmus, it's not only a teaching task. Erasmus is bringing mentalities, legislation, people together. And it is not coincidence that all of us said yesterday that we have lost the 50% of our capacity in Erasmus programs, although the University of Thessaloniki has a centralized system to proceed with bilateral or multilateral agreements. Erasmus cannot survive via e-minutes. On the other hand, and thus in Greece, we live a digital revolution. The recent 2 or 3 years, everything is digitalized, e-payments, e-passports, e-vaccination, everything is digital. Recently, the law has also introduced the digital private document where the people can proceed with a contract without being physical present. That is a part of it. But digital should remain the ultimum refugium for teaching, nevertheless, if that's medicine or law teaching. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Harula, for your excellent presentation. Before I open the floor for remarks and comments, maybe allow me just a question. According to my opinion, the most important thing is to see which is the interest of the students. Which is the interest? Is it important, so important to have, for example, in-person learning, or is digital learning better for those people? All we have to find out is the best approach for the students, not so much for their colleagues, for the professors. We are there because the students are there. So we have to find out which is for those people the most efficient means of understanding, of learning, and of progress. This is the central question in my mind. After this remark, I would like to open the floor. Please, you have the floor now for remarks and, of course, questions and interventions and things like this. I think Professor Alexiou. Anna, would you like to?
Thank you. Yes.
Anna is present. Hello, Anna. Nice to
Hello
see you.
everybody.
Nice.
Teaching for more than 50 years, I have now the capacity to see the people who want to put a question at least or a remark before they are indicated in this way. So Anna, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to say hello, a big hello to Professor Fenge, whom I met 21 years ago in Thessaloniki when I was directing a program on legal education in Greece. And he offered all his knowledge to us, especially during a conference that was organized at the end of
You are in mute.
You are in
You have-
mute, Anna. Anna, you are in mute. Unmute.
You have to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anna,
I have problems. I have problems with my
Yeah, we
computer.
all have. Don't worry.
We cooperated. I cooperated with Professor Fenge. He did the honor to me to share his knowledge, and a book was finally produced in 2006 with the title LPs for Europe, the European and Comparative Dimension of Law Teaching in Europe, which I guess, since there are no more copies, has become a best-selling book. I don't want to keep you much. I just want to say that I wish many years of happiness to Professor Fenge, a happy, a Merry Christmas for the days to come, and hope we meet even through this electronic way again in the future. Thank you.
So, social and emotional reasons, the most important thing for in-person teaching? This is a question.
Professor Kaisis, may I add something
Yes, please.
in order also to deliver a small answer or a small proposal on your very reasonable questions? Well, it depends from the circumstances. The Greeks are aware that due to a number of political and social reasons, we have in Greece a huge number of universities, which are located even in small places. Well, they have some of them, even in the peripheria, enjoy a high reputation, but a part of them is not really necessary. Well, if we see the education as a part of teaching, first of all, we have to minimize the number of existing universities in Greece. And then I fully join your view that we cannot replace physical, but we have to mitigate all the risks that we have due to this huge number of faculties. We are lucky to have just 3 law faculties in Greece, but we have at least 10 medicine faculties, 20 mathematics faculties, I don't know how many agricultural faculties, etc., etc. First, we have to work on the quality and then to answer these questions. But of course, I fully agree we cannot replace teaching via e-meetings. E-meetings should have a secondary and a supplementary function and not the main one.
Well, of course.
If you allow me,
Yes, please. Yes, Professor.
first of all, let me greet Professor Alexiou, dear Anna. I remember perfectly being in Thessaloniki, and it was a wonderful meeting, and I participated also at the time in that experience of the book that we've done together. So it's a great pleasure seeing you again. Second, this thing about the use of digital media, I think, of course, as we are saying until now, it's impossible to replace the personal relation between a student and a professor, and that is the basis of our teaching experience. But at the same time, we should complement it with this kind of new media. The adaptation that we need to do is to use also side by side, as we are doing personal contact, we should also try this kind of means that offer us new possibilities of communicating and even of researching. And yesterday I talked about an experience that we tried for the last 2 years, and we are repeating again now, a cooperation with the Pupils group, the Pupils network, and an American university, the Lincoln University, and the experience has been very successful. And the experience is that we should show, we should first choose some candidates in Portugal and in America and Hanover, no matter whatsoever we are talking about. And these students are paired in groups, international groups of 2 students, 1 Portuguese, 1 American, 1 German, 1 American, and they have to do a task together. They help they help themselves in researching. They choose a topic, they research on that topic, and by the end, each of them writes a paper that is going to be presented in a course of his own university. And then to complement the whole experience, the best papers are chosen. Last year, we chose the 5 best papers of each university, and we made a special emission by the internet where the students presented the papers and discussed the papers. And to finish all of that with a more traditional experience, we publish those papers, the best papers, in our site. You can look at them if you go to the Pupils webpage, and there is a reference to this Lincoln Pupils project, Lincoln Pupils Common Research. It was indeed a wonderful experience that complemented the teaching that we could do in Lisbon, in the Duncan University, in Hanover, whatsoever. And it was a wonderful way of putting the students from different countries working together and helping themselves. Because, well, if I have problems in finding bibliography for a topic on comparative law between Portugal and the United States, the student that is paired in the United States gives you that indication that you need. And if you don't know an expression that is typical of a legal system, you have someone to ask. And this kind of cooperation make, on one hand, good relationships, good friendships among the students. Some of them now are still writing each other and giving news, and it make new personal connections. But at the same time, it was a nice research experience, and the works, you can see them published in the webpage, are of a good quality, and sometimes even a very good quality. So this is a kind of things we can do, complementing the personal experience with these new technological methods that we should use in our teaching. And if we look mainly at the post-graduation studies, if you look at the master courses, if you look at the PhD courses and these kind of things, this complement is even more necessary and more useful. So I'm not saying that we should replace the person-to-person teaching, but I think we should complement it by the use of technological means. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor de Silva. Professor Karula, please, you have the floor. We can't hear you. Open your
You are
microphone.
on mute. Carol, you have to.
So thank you very much, Professor Cassis. I heard the speech of Karula and also the comment and the presentation of Vasco. So I would like only to complete with an experience which we are doing at Sergi CY, the new name, quite now. We have in a subject, in my subject, it means history of law, which is not very usual to work online. We have a cooperation with 5 colleagues from 5 European universities only in one subject, history of law. We have chosen one theme in this huge space of history of law, one theme. Every university, in every university, the colleague teaches his own students, small groups, about this. And we have made in online meetings with the professor, the colleagues from the other universities, and the students, where the students can present their work, their project to one another and collaborate. And we can also speak about that and guide the students and so on. And we will meet each other once, and then we will prepare an online exhibition of documents and videos and so on. So it is a possibility that is opened only because we have this possibility of online working, of internet, and we are used to use it because of the pandemic, I think, more, but it is a quite a positive experience and possibility. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I share the opinion that in the future, we will have a mixture because first of the emotional and social needs of the students. So we will have a part which will be in person teaching and learning, and of course, because of the great importance of the digital technology, we will have, and now we have already, partially teaching which will be digitally. This is my opinion, only personal, not in my capacity as president of one of the biggest Greek universities now, but looking on those things, I have the feeling that we are going on to more and more digital technology. This is, for example, obvious in the case of research. Now we make research based on databases. Databases is something which all of us use, and without this, it is impossible to be informed about the last publications and things like that. Of course, databases are expensive. And of course, databases are based on algorithms. And if we have to do with algorithms, we have automatically to think who made this algorithm. Is the algorithm neutral, independent, or not? Normally it is, yes, it is. But we have to have a look on this and to find out what is happening. Otherwise, we have something which is prepared and we follow that and we go in the same direction. But plurality and more ideas and discussion and open society, especially open society and critic, is, according to my opinion, very important for the science and especially for the research. excuse me that I have spoken too much maybe as coordinator, but I would like to open the floor one more time. Maybe some of you would like to give his opinion or a comment or something like this. If it's not the case, I am obliged to.
May I say something?
Yes, please.
I am from the University of Groningen. I'm not a law teacher, but I am responsible for the incoming exchange students. And I always talk to them, well, at this moment, of course, online. But the general experience is what you all described, that the digital version of teaching and the online developments now in these days, they give a lot of new opportunities, as for example Vasco described, but it is very, very important what you, Professor Cassius, also emphasized. The social aspect for students is very, very important. It's not only law teaching, but also to make them grow into more complete European citizens, accepting that there are many different views and many different ways of law teaching. I once had a student, well, he was from the US, and I always have a talk when students leave, and he said, this exchange was a mind-opening experience. And that is a very important aspect, I think, of any teacher, of any law teaching in the world. Together with the social aspects. The students need contact and need to feel when they are in a group what the others think, and how, when they say something, what the reaction is of other students. I think that's a very, very important aspect of being not a law teacher, but hearing the experiences of the students and seeing their development when they first come to Groningen, and then after a semester or a year when they leave Groningen again. They're really different persons, and that's, I think, is the most important aspect of exchange abroad. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is really important. We have all of us to see what the disruptive character of these modern digital technologies. What means that? Disruptive character. Something changes in another way and put away things which we know and which we are familiar. This is something which we have to have in mind. Of course, we have to have in mind this increasing complexity of the system. The complexity is increasing every day. This is something, according to my pure opinion, really important. The third one, this opacity. Opacity means in this case, something is happening, but we don't know exactly what it is. We don't know that. Some of us think that they know, but if you want to have a deep idea of what is happening, we have to work really very hard with very modern instruments, with very, very modern literature, and of course, not only legal. This is the problem. And the worst of all, worst, I say that like this, is this which I said, vulnerability of the system. This is well known to everybody as cybersecurity. This is a part of the whole problematic. All those characteristics are to be taken under consideration. And of course, this is my personal opinion, we have to work with digital technology too. There is no other way. We have to do that, but very carefully in order to have the best results, the best effort for our students for which we are here and we go. Well, I don't see any more. Please, Mrs. Tekidu. Yes, please.
Yes, I can say something about our university. I'm working for the University of Public Administration of Lower Saxony, and our university was recently funded with 1 million euros in order to develop a blended learning teaching concept. And I think the future of teaching will be blended learning in terms of pure transfer of knowledge can be provided by self-study of the students, and we should use the presence or the face-to-face teaching in order to exchange, to discuss, and maybe to practice law. This is how we see the future of law teaching, yes, after the pandemic time. And this foundation is for 3 years, and we have a research team who will develop now this blended learning system. Thank you.
This is important. Thank you very much for that. Well, I don't see any more comments. So according to the program, we have to go to the third panel, thoughts about modern law teaching from 2002 onwards.
Excuse me, Professor Casey.
Please,
There is
you have the
missing
floor
Andreas Schwarzer.
and the moderation. Yes, thank you very much for that.
No, excuse me, Professor Casey. There is still missing one intervention from Andreas Schwarzer.
Oh,
That is
You
still
have
the
to stay,
problem.
Thanasis.
excuse me.
You
for
have
that.
to stay. We have another intervention.
Okay, yes, please. Professor Schwarzer has the floor.
Yes, okay, thank you. Once more, a warm Grüß Gott from Innsbruck in Austria. Before I start, I just have a technical question, because since some time I don't see the speaker on my screen with the big picture. I only see Professor Fenge, which is of course very nice.
Ich werde nur Hallo, also ich werde dann erst öffnen Hallo sagen.
But I think maybe it would be nice to see the speaker on the main screen. Is it possible, or is there something wrong?
I don't know. I'm seeing everybody in my computer, but I can ask the technician that is helping us, if you allow me. But we can go on.
Yes, of course, I will. So, because we are not out of time, but of course, time is running out a little bit. Thank you for inviting me to give a short intervention in this conference to pay homage to my academic teacher and mentor, Professor Hilmar Fenge, on occasion of his 90th birthday, which has been some weeks ago, and of course to value him very highly. This is a big honor for me, and I will do this with real pleasure. Of course, it would be more fun to see you all in person in Fribourg, and we have heard about fun in science from Bernd Oppermann, but this is the best way to do it over online. So at the beginning, some history. After the completion of my doctorate, Hilmar Fenge, at that time holding the chair for civil law and civil procedure at the University of Hanover, offered me a job as an academic assistant to give me the opportunity for working on my habilitation. That happened now 30 years ago in 1991. And I was, of course, very happy to get this chance, and he supported and promoted me as we closely worked together also in building up the ALPS program for the next 6 years until I got my postdoctoral qualification. And I had to go on with my academic career by teaching at other faculties. But we stay in contact, and I would say we become friends. So my task today is to give an impression of the transfer of knowledge in legal education, which Hilmar has mentioned in his speech at the beginning, during the COVID-19 crisis. Just to inform you about the situation at my faculty, very shortly after the breakout of COVID in a famous skiing destination situated nearby Innsbruck in the Tyrolean mountains, the University of Innsbruck abruptly shifted all courses of every faculty to distance learning on March the 10th, 2020, because our lecture period had just started on March the 2nd in 2020. And then during the next period of 19 months until the end of September this year, that is for 3 semesters, there were only rare exceptions allowed for courses, mainly with low numbers of participants, mainly regarding practical education, and when personal exchange between teachers and students is absolutely necessary. So all the other courses has to be online. With the start of this winter semester at the beginning of October, we optimistically return to the classrooms, even if only with a reduced utilized capacity. But now, after we have suffered dramatically rising infection rates in Austria, we are back to online courses since 3 weeks. So maybe this is a never-ending story. I don't hope that, but it seems to be. Of course, teachers as well as students, not only in Innsbruck or Austria or even Europe, but worldwide, have mostly necessarily adapted to a variety of distance learning instruments and methods. But I like to raise the question if this should be basically the way of modern law teaching, like the headline is saying. So I think we have to differentiate between traditional types of teaching and the way they are taught during the pandemic. To analyze the effects of distance teaching and remote learning under COVID conditions, it is necessary to differentiate between the various types of courses taught at universities. So there are 3 main categories which are used since decades in humanities and social science, including law, which are lectures, tutorials, and seminars. They serve different purposes and therefore they have to be treated differently. So first, for the lectures, stemming from the beginning of university education in the Middle Ages, the lecture is still the classical and conventional form of teaching in higher education institutions. The German description as Vorlesung or reading points to these early days when there were no or only a few books available, which was why the lecturer has to read to the students his manuscript or out of a book, sometimes commenting it. We heard from Hilmar at the beginning of our seminar that this was even the case when he studied in Heidelberg in the 1950s. Nowadays, and for a long time, this seems to be not necessary anymore because we are flooded with a massive abundance of literature, since many years, even always available over the internet. But still we have lectures at universities, now enabling the academic teacher to find his own way and style how to get the relevant information to the listeners. At best, professors are teaching in the same areas in which they do research, following Wilhelm von Humboldt's ideal of model of combining research and studies from the early 19th century. Then the students are up to date in their legal science. So lectures are an instrument to transfer a lot of knowledge or learning material in a limited time to the audience, especially in big classes, which are common in today's crowded mass universities. This leads to frontal or ex cathedra teaching, leaving little room for interaction between the teacher and his students. By the way, this problem could be solved if classes are split up into groups of 25 or 30 participants, like for instance in US law schools, or under the German pilot project of a single-stage legal education in the 1970s, then in the newly founded law faculty in Hanover. Is this traditional form of teaching through lectures enhanced or even not downgraded if conducted from a distance? I don't think so. First, pure online lecturing in big classes, mostly without even having the students on the screen, is much more exhausting for lecturers and for students than being in a classroom. Something which brain scientists are referring to as video fatigue. And most surveys show that teachers are a lot more stressed and annoyed when conducting distant teaching. And this is my personal impression too. I am feeling really tired after a Zoom teaching session, only looking into a black hole. So this is counterproductive, because if the lecturer is in a good mood and feels comfortable and has fun, his lecture, of course, is more convincing and stimulating. And in-person lectures are not only a one-way delivery of information. The teacher observes the students in the room. He gets an impression of the comprehension, and he is able to adjust the style and the content of lecture in real time. This is not possible with big classes in pure distant learning settings. Remote students too are more stressed than in the classroom, and that of course reduces their learning results. In face-to-face situations, often there are questions, even in bigger classes, from my experience, so that other students benefit from watching their classmates and are more willing to engage in the lectures themselves. This can only happen in a very reduced way online if the participants are not visible, cannot use their microphone, or only communicate per chat, which is normal in bigger classes from 50 people, participants onwards. Second, the idea of hybrid lectures, that are classroom lectures which are also transmitted to remote students. They combine a face-to-face event with an online lecture in the same time. This, I think, is even more problematic because it creates two classes of students with different possibilities to benefit from the lecture. Those who can watch only the transmission are in the same or even worse situation as participating in an online course. The others, of course, are better off. Another third option, but in addition to a live online or hybrid lecture, are recorded lectures. Then, of course, students are more flexible and they could decide at what time they watch the lecture. But I think this format is even more reduced regarding communication and more one-way or frontal. Overall, there is no room for any interaction. Moreover, playing a recorded lecture creates the incentive to skip parts that seems to be uninteresting, because the students are not dedicating a certain time slot for the lecture. There is no commitment to be in the lecture. And finally, if they watch while keeping busy with other activities, such as driving or cooking or doing sports, they are distracted and much less focused than the classroom would. So this is for lectures, and I think online is only, let's say, third or fourth best. And tutorials, these classes are usually run in smaller groups, mainly between 15 and 25 students, and are intended to foster group discussions, often on the content of lectures. They are used to train students. That is why they are named Übungen in German, by working on exercises. It is shown how to apply legal rules in practical situations, such as finding a solution for a problem of a certain case. Because interaction and communication is more relevant in tutorials than in lectures, the adverse effects of online teaching are much stronger. This is only scarcely compensated by the possibility, due to a much lower number of participants, to make the students more visible via camera or to let them use the microphone. Especially practical training is hardly effective if conducted in a distance. And last but not least, seminars. The seminar is a course at the university where the students are presenting a scientific paper on a certain topic, instructed by a lecturer to research more in depth a legal problem. Like in tutorials, the number of participants is limited, mostly to 15 or 20 students. In this type of course, the students are in the situation of a lecturer because they are informing and thus teaching their fellow students. That means due to their active role, they are much more stressed than if they are passively following a lecture. Because online sessions are increasing these negative effects, they are detrimental to the learning outcome of seminars. So an outlook, from my point of view, distance teaching cannot adequately replace face-to-face courses. That, of course, was made clear even in the discussion before. Apart from the arguments presented above, remote learning is also creating deficits in social life and in social learning or learning in the social surrounding. In this pandemic type, it helped us to offer courses with a reduced level of efficiency and learning results. But I would advise against a massive conversion to online courses in the future. We should transform to distance learning universities like Fern Universität Hagen or Open University in the Netherlands or in Austria, the University in Linz. Of course, that doesn't mean to abstain totally from any teaching out of the physical classroom. As we heard in the discussion, for certain purposes, and in addition to teaching live in a broad and fundamental way, different concepts of learning in the digital sphere could be created, tested, and used. And I am sure that Hilmar Fenge, on the basis of his commitment in legal education, will observe how things develop in this area during the next years. And I like to conclude with a citation in my area. It's from a singer-songwriter and also a Nobel Prize winner. So then you know that this is Robert Zimmerman, or also known as Bob Dylan, and is from his song from the 1970s, which is called Forever Young. And I cite the first verse: "May God bless and keep you always. May your wishes all come true. May you always do for others and let others do for you. May you build a ladder to the stars and climb on every rung. May you stay forever young." Thank you, Hilmar.
If you allow me, just for a technical reason, I found the technician, and it says that it's broadcasting with all the participants seen at the same time. Probably it's your computer, because there is a button in the top of the program on your right hand that says visualization, and you should click on that top, and then you have the option of seeing just the one that is speaking, or every participant, or having the whole picture. So you should choose. It's a problem of your computer, not of the mission. I'm sorry.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Great.
I only want to mention that, okay.
Okay, but you can solve it by clicking in the button visualization, and you can see us all at the same time.
We have one more comment. Professor Apalagaki, you have the floor, please.
Yes, thank you. Well, it's true that the debate, well, can be even longer. Well, I have just one remark. I'm aware of the concerns, mainly in Germany, about e-classes. And it was extremely interesting, the categorization of Professor Schwarze. Well, the remark is that we have experienced the e-classes under extraordinary circumstances, under the pandemic, I mean. We have not run such a method in normal times. So far, I have some concerns if we can come to final conclusions on this question. While during the pandemic, e-classes was the sole alternative of doing nothing. We had none other possibility than to keep at least 30 or 40 or a part of our teaching activity under pandemic and under lockdowns. Whether it's appropriate to design the future on this topic, having done experience under these extraordinary circumstances, is a question for me. Another remark, more or less, all the European countries, they spend public funds in order to keep their universities in full operation, with some exceptions, of course. Well, and then we are missing funds in research, in other activities, or even in infrastructure. I'm wondering whether it's appropriate to open a discussion how we can save funds or we can flow funds in other most relevant activities instead of keeping very expensive infrastructures in buildings, electricity, and others. Well, we have to take into account all these factors which determining how the quality of educations and the substance of educations itself. For me, in person, it's very early to come to any conclusions, and that's why I just have delivered the picture in the pandemic time. But of course, looking in the future, we cannot come to a fixed conclusion that e-classes have to replace physical, or physical should continue to dominate the educations, because it's too early to come to conclusions like this. The voices against or in favor shall increase in the future, and of course, except some fields where we need socializing, I don't see why to exclude in total the remote teaching.
Yes, there is an old, very old, but according to my opinion today, strong argument. If you have a new technology, you use it, or you are obliged to use it. You cannot go out of this modern technological society. This is something which I believe. That's why I am the opinion that we will have in the future a mixture of both systems. Principally because of the emotional reasons and social reasons. This will be the part of in-person teaching, and the other one will be
Wie bitte? Na, danke.
Frau Tekido, machen Sie Ihr
Unmute. Mute.
alles in Ordnung.
Mute,
Mute.
please. You should do.
Das ist in Ordnung schon. Also,
Okay.
this is my opinion, and the question is to be answered. Shall we
Professor,
say, are we an old school? Are we an old school, or are we a modern school? This is a question. This is something which we have to answer.
and Professor Kaisi, if I may, I just missed to give another info to the participants that starting from 2001, and you are very well aware of it, we have the possibility to hold either procedures, civil procedures, of course, not penal one, via imagings. And in the last time, in the framework of digitalization in Greece, some courts have started to make use of these chances, and so they have reduced the cost and they have increased their productivity. That's why I said that we have to consider a lot of factors in order to come to a reasonable conclusion.
Well, okay. As I said at the beginning, those technologies, digital, which we have in the courts, this is only the development of the old technology. It's nothing more than that. You have the fax, now you have digital fax, you have modern forms of the old system. And the question there is if this technology is disruptive or not. This is the question. If the question is disruptive, you make something new, a new society, new situation, new students, new teachers. This is something which we never have to forget. Allow me to say that, just as a personal, as I said, opinion, only a personal opinion, but disruption is something which is in our days very common, and we have to look at this. Well,
I think that we can finish this session.
yes.
Thank you very much, Professor Kaisis, for your brilliant conduction of the discussion, and all the participants for the brilliant way as they presented the questions.